Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healey with DevilsDigest.com.
Joe, spring practice continues to barrel along. 2 weeks now are in the books, 3 to go, reaching near the halfway point. So we got obviously some observations to talk about, some portal activity going on, some good news on the recruiting trail for the Devils. But that's not all. This is a very active spring, and there's some fun events going on.
There you go. As you all definitely remember, if you've been following our show, you remember when we did our Unblocked by Ben Coleman segment earlier in this football season, right? And what happened? ASU went out and won the Big 12 title. So obviously those things are related. So good things happen when folks who speak of the Devils partner up with our good buddy Ben Coleman. And that's going to be continuing starting this week, starting Tuesday. So if y'all are listening to this, there's probably a very small window of opportunity for you. Probably talking about like today, if you're listening to this on Tuesday, of course, April the 8th. Lineman's Den, the very first edition of Lineman's Den with Ben Coleman will be taking place at Pedal House Brewery in Tempe, right there on Mill Avenue from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. And I'll be doing the honors of hosting the event, talking with Ben all about the 2024 season and what's to come for 2025. And Brad, if we are talking about linemen and Sun Devil football, there's one guy that's got to be there in addition to Ben Coleman. That is our great friend, Sun Devil legend and Hall of Famer, Juan Roque, the very first guest we ever had on Speak of the Devils. He will be there at the Lineman's Den show as well. So come on out, folks. Come check us out again. It's at Pedal House Brewery in Tempe. I'm sure y'all have been there, of course, on Mill Avenue. Once again, from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. We'll be talking to Ben and Juan, getting you all excited for this upcoming season of Sun Devil football. So hope to see each and every one of you out there this Tuesday. It's also going to be repeating each week through the month of April, so stay tuned for more information. But love to see you all out there at Pedal House this Tuesday, April the 8th at 6 p.m.
Can't imagine having Juan Roque and Ben Coleman combining in one place. That's a hell of a lot of great reps for a great Sun Devil offensive lineman there. And as you mentioned, it's going to be continuing all month long. Some really cool things going on there. Now that, of course, is the biggest news item for the week. But there's also some things that have been going on the fields, the courts, and the recruiting trail. Let's start off with maybe some kind of on the down note, and maybe work our way up to more positive stuff. Joe, as we talked about in our last episode, ASU Baseball had been on a bit of a roll and entered the rankings for the first time in a little bit, and hosted rival Arizona for a series at Muni over the weekend. And the crowds were good, and the results not so much. ASU dropped 2 out of 3.
Yeah, there was a great deal of momentum to begin the week, not just from what had happened the previous weekend, not just getting in the top 25 as ASU had done, but a resounding run rule victory on Tuesday of last week over Cal State Fullerton. Yeah, ASU was just going into that weekend series against Arizona with all the momentum in the world, and the Wildcats didn't have nearly as much. But you know what? It's baseball. You got to play the games every inning. And so the Devils dropped those first two on Friday and Saturday before coming back with a victory on Sunday, which was, a crucial thing to avoid the sweep there. So certainly disheartening, of course, to lose that series to Arizona and having already played that midweek game. ASU is going to lose like the season series in baseball, 1-3 to the Wildcats. So naturally, those few losses knocks ASU down a couple pegs in terms of the pecking order of the Big 12 standings, and it just kind of also has you, wondering about the identity of the team. Really, again, I go back to that concept of the high level of momentum that was in place about this time last week. But you turn the page now. It's a new week, and you can't dwell on losing that sort of series. So up ahead for ASU, a 1 p.m. first pitch this Tuesday against CSUN at home before the Devils travel for their weekend series at Cincinnati. Bearcats are 19-12, but they won 7 straight in recent weeks before a loss this past Sunday to Texas Tech. So a challenging opponent, great opportunity for ASU to get back in the win column. You got to make up for some of those losses as things progress. You just want to see what has been a solid season so far that in some ways has exceeded expectations a little bit. You want to see that momentum continue, and and not have it be what we've seen recently, where just some up and down play over the course of especially the back half of the season we've seen in the last couple of years. So you want that, consistency to be there. So you're not going to get too terribly devastated over losing a series. It is obviously a bummer to say the very least, given the team it was against. But the Devils got to get right back on the diamond here starting Tuesday and get back into their winning ways.
Yeah, we'll see how resilient this group of our Willie Boomquist Devils can be, and maybe with that afternoon first pitch time, it seems like plenty of time for some enterprising Devils out in Tempe to catch the ASU baseball game, then head over to Pedal House and catch the Lineman's. Then that's a hell of an afternoon.
That's a solid Tuesday in my book. That's like a Ferris Bueller day off part two, if you ask me, for the modern day.
All right, so now let's move over to basketball. Some good news for Molly Miller in the transfer portal as she looks to begin the process of rebuilding that program. A couple of new commitments coming in via the portal. First, Denver guard Jordan Jones. Some pretty good numbers, Joe. 19.9 points per game last year, 6.7 boards, just a shade under 3 assists. And she's not the only guard coming in. From Penn State, Gabby Elliott's bringing 13.6 points per game and nearly 5 boards a game. So, most of the players that were under the previous regime, understandably in the portal, but some nice building blocks early on so far.
Yeah, a lot of roster rebuild that's going to have to take place there for the women's team, but the track record that Molly Miller has is something that I'm sure that speaks for itself, and her entering into the Big 12 at Arizona State is something that can be sold to recruits for sure. So eager to see how this team takes shape and what can be expected under year one. We've talked about it before, and whether you know folks should expect instant success or how long of a project it's going to be to rebuild this program into a tournament caliber team. We will see. But if you get solid pieces like this, players that score in double figures, that's something that you can work with and perhaps be integral parts of building this team. So again, we'll see how things develop as the remainder of the offseason goes on.
Switching over to the men's team, and that rebuilding effort, continues to be a hefty one for Bobby Hurley. Since we last joined you last week, 3 more names have announced that they're entering the portal or been reported that they're portal bound. Guard Austin Nunez, who of course started his career as a Sun Devil, left to Ole Miss and came back. Unfortunately, was sidelined with injury. He is in the portal. Center Sean Phillips and freshman Amir Ali. That's a new trio. However, one player has announced, Joe, that they're coming back, and that's Trevor Best, who was a midseason acquisition there. But so I believe as of the time of this record on Monday evening, he's the only scholarship player slated to return from last year's team.
Yeah, at this point, it's easier to say the players that haven't entered the portal. It's been quite a news cycle in that regard in the last couple weeks, or pretty much really since the portal opened. Folks, I'm sure were hopeful that a good portion of this roster could stay intact with the fact that Bobby Hurley is returning to Arizona State for the 2025 to 26 season. But so far, that has not really added up to too much in this regard. Now, obviously, these entries don't automatically always result in departure, but much more often than not, they do. You're wondering, a guy like Nunez, is he really going to come back essentially for a third time? You know what I'm saying? So it's like you mentioned, Best being the lone survivor there, which is such a kind of funny thing. As you mentioned, he was a mid-year addition from the high school ranks. A really interesting story. And it ended up playing some very meaningful minutes, of course, with the depleted roster ASU had, and he had some solid performances. I know a lot of folks refer to the BYU game down the stretch where he scored in double digits and played very well. So he can be a player at this level. But once again, and gosh, even worse. I mean, I know in recent years it was about 2 to 3 players returning in the last couple of years per year, it seemed like, and felt like this year would be better, but it's not really turning out that way. So talked about a roster rebuild and the need that will be there for the women's team and what they're doing with that goes extra for the men's team. However, thankfully, there are a handful of names already entering the list of what the roster will be for next year. So to the credit of Bobby Hurley and staff, they are starting to get players to come to Arizona State to balance out the ones who are choosing to depart ASU.
Yeah, we talked about a couple of the transfer portal additions on our last episode, and since we last joined you, another one also is announced that they're coming over, and that this new one is coming from Oakland. It's forward Alan Mukeba, 6'6", 14.6 points per game, 7.5 boards, and hey, this is good for a team that perhaps over the last few years, ASU fans have kind of bemoaned the lack of shooting. He led the Horizon League in shooting at 57%.
Yeah, so it's a guy, one of those like I don't know, Charles Barkley type of players, not the tallest guy in the world, I think, but I think he's about 250 or something like that. Pretty big dude. So, again, these are pieces that can be helpful. ASU's had some success getting players from like that major type of range. So at this point, I'm not going to go out and say you want to take every player you can get at this point, but it's I'm sure that a lot of other teams are, if they're recruiting against Arizona State, they're probably using the lack of stability at the head coaching position, at least for the long-term future, against ASU. So I'm sure it's going to be a battle to land high caliber players or players that could hopefully potentially move the needle in a direction where this team can get back in the tournament. So there are going to be a ton of question marks surrounding Sun Devil basketball all the way up until I want to say November of this year, but it's probably further than that. Folks are just really going to be, keeping their eyes on what goes on. So again, getting players that have accomplishments at the college level, that is a good first step.
Yeah, and so one thing that Bobby Hurley has never been knocked for has been his recruiting acumen, and he was able to land a couple of commits as well this past week. Three-star forward Jayon Pitt, a 6'7" front court player, he announced his commitment, and then that was followed up most recently with a kind of a nice, really big addition, a four-star center slash forward, and Marcus Jackson, 6'9", a top 75 prospect in this 2025 class from Raleigh, one of the highest rate remaining uncommitted players in the class.
Yeah, that was a big get here to start this week. As you mentioned, he's the 72nd overall by Rivals, a 4-star, I believe the number 9 center from Raleigh, North Carolina. Talking about Pitt, he's a top 150 player, 134 overall according to Rivals, number 22 at his position. He's from the state of California. So, some solid pickups, especially for, this class where you're not going to have a ton of uncommitted players. I mean, there's still obviously a handful out there. So ASU's making the best of what's around. So to get a 4-star center when you're, that's probably a signal when you're losing Phillips and Quaintance, those big men that you had out there. And again, you put that asterisk on that of course they theoretically still could return, but you just don't see a ton of probability in that. So it's a big get to get a young big man that comes to ASU with some solid pedigree.
All right, now let's turn our attention to football. Now, of course, the recruiting for Kenny Dillingham and his staff has really been ramping up. This 2026 class has the makings of something pretty special, and they added a couple pieces over the last few days. Starting off over the weekend with defensive back Jalen Williams, 6'4", 165 pounder from Marietta, Georgia. Now, some services had him as a 4-star, but a really highly evaluated guy, very talented DB, and kind of what we've seen so far over the last couple of cycles. ASU loves young, talented DBs.
Williams, it's interesting, especially as it pertains to Rivals, because when he committed to Arizona State, he was a 4-star prospect, ranked the number 9 nickel defensive back in the country. Rivals has recently, if y'all don't know, within the last few months, added to some of like the actual positions that are evaluated. So they have a nickel, not just cornerback and safety and that sort of thing. So pretty, innovative, modern approach to things. So he was a 4-star. That was just a couple days ago. Now he's a 3-star. Kind of weird. Folks are asking some questions about, why does something like that happen? Even though obviously ASU just made the college football playoff and won the Big 12, this is kind of a move that seemed from more of years of the past where, if he would have committed to Georgia or Alabama or USC, he's a 4-star. Maybe now he's a 5-star. Commit to Arizona State. Now he's a 3-star. A little odd to me. But you know what? I'm not the type to get too terribly hung up in star rankings and that sort of thing. It's just kind of weird to see that. He's also got offers from the likes of Auburn, Missouri, North Carolina, Tennessee, Texas A&M. So a guy that's, coming here with some fanfare for sure. Again, not getting real too caught up on that fringe 4-star thing. There's still a lot of time to be had in terms of how recruits are evaluated for this cycle. So his rankings and everyone else's can fluctuate and change dramatically here and there from now till signing day. So again, not getting too worried about the nerding of that star ranking stuff. This is a very, very solid pickup for ASU.
Yeah, at the time of the commitment and really talking about like that day, he was the third 4-star commitment per Rivals in ASU's 26 class behind quarterback Jake Fetty and tight end Israel Briggs. But regardless of the recruiting rankings and what service says what, You really just got to look at the what this staff has been able to do in terms of finding talent, evaluating talent, and most importantly, developing talent. And so you got to figure they really like what they see from Jalen Williams in this 26 class, make him a piece. And then earlier today, ASU was able to kind of really kind of reaps the benefits of a recent big time recruiting weekend. And this probably won't be the last of these commitments from this coming or this past weekend. But they added some big beef to the offensive line. 3-star offensive lineman Marquise Uini from Copperas Cove, Texas. 6'5", 300 pounds, continuing that poly pipeline.
Yeah, he's a big dude. And like Williams, he's a real high 3-star. So right on the cusp of a 4-star, according to Rivals. He also has offers from the likes of Baylor, Michigan, Stanford, and others. And as Brad said, the expectation is that there are probably a few more commits on the way this week from that big recruiting weekend. Heck, by the time y'all are listening to this, you might be saying you guys are missing a guy or two. So, always a good time to be dialed in to devilsdigest.com and following all of us on social media so you can keep up with all that. But, two solid pickups. ASU, I believe, has the number 20 class, if I'm not mistaken, just going off memory, according to Rivals for 2026. So, again, with the transfer portal and how that has been just such a beacon of productivity for these just crucial positions that ASU's had, the Sam Leavitts, the Cam Scadaboos, the Jordan Tysons, the Shamari Simmons of the world. High school recruiting is still a thing, and that helps. And if you can keep guys around for the duration, as ASU's seen with, likes of Keith Abney and that sort of thing, that can really be a benefit to your program. So you got to still build that high school pipeline, and ASU's doing a great job so far.
All right, let's turn our attention to reviewing the week that was for the Devils on the practice field. Spring ball is now 6 practices in, and it concluded this past Saturday under the lights at Mountain America Stadium with a scrimmage-heavy session. We'll dive into all that. Yeah, overall, just kind of in some of the broad strokes through these first couple weeks, the defense is kind of still ahead, as you would expect at this point in camp. One of the things that Kenny Dillingham told us after Saturday's scrimmage is that he really wants to see more of the young guys step up. He kind of threw down a challenge a little bit. He highlighted some guys like Plaz Johnson or AJ Ia as some younger guys that are making the most of their opportunities because with a veteran heavy group, this is kind of by design. Some of the stars, if you will, that are coming back for another year, they're not playing too much. And so there's a lot of opportunity there. So through these first 2 weeks, Kenny has seen some guys that he likes, but he wants to see some more younger guys make some big time strides.
Yeah, and they've got a lot of youth in there, a great deal. I think the vast majority of this 2025 signing class, those are early entries. So guys that are on campus for spring ball, or maybe younger transfers or players that have just come up through the ranks. As we know, ASU had, especially like in the secondary, a lot of youth last year, guys, most of which redshirted. So, it's a senior heavy team. It's an experience heavy team. We've talked about it multiple times, that 2 or 3 deep especially on defense, but on both sides of the ball, a lot of experience returning. ASU does not have too many starters that depart from last year. That said, that doesn't mean that you disregard the youth or the depth or, wait for next year to worry about that sort of development. You always have to keep that progression going. So it makes sense that even if they're not necessarily pegged to be, your starters or your star players, you still want to call upon those youngsters to contribute because they're always a play away, and you have to have them ready for the future. And that preparation for the future is something that can begin now, even if those guys are not going to be crucial playmakers on the field this fall.
All right, so let's run down the position group and kind of highlight some of the developments, some of the news, some of the battles that are going on in each of those groups. And there's no such battle at quarterback, of course. Sam Leavitt, of course, is firmly entrenched as the starter. Now, he hasn't been throwing, maybe been playing his best, sharpest ball. And I think maybe some of that might be he knows he's a starter. Maybe he's taking some chances in it, which is fine to do in a practice setting. This past Saturday during the scrimmage, he had 2 picks. One really kind of ill-advised pass where he kind of broke the cardinal rule of running to one side of the field, throwing back across his body. That resulted in a Jordan Crook leaping interception. He's still having success attacking deep, pushing the ball. You can tell the command of the offense is really kind of leveled up a little bit and kind of just command overall from a leadership capacity. But I think really one of the continuing storylines from at least from where we were last week, backup quarterback Jeff Sims looks really good, to be quite honest, throwing a good ball, making some good decisions. 4 total touchdowns in Saturday's scrimmage, 2 rushing, including about a 60-70 yarder, showing off that athleticism, 2 passing as well. I think probably the most notable development over at the position over this past week, Navi Bruzan is now taking the third team reps over redshirt, or excuse me, true freshman quarterback Michael Butter Tollefson. Tollefson had got the third team reps for the first several practices. Really was struggling, and of course, it's hefty learning curve. But Bruzan, who was here a season ago and is now a redshirt freshman, he's now been over the last couple of practices been taking those team 3 reps.
Yeah, and that's kind of what you want to see. You want to see those guys behind Leavitt be ready and be competing and pushing each other for spots. If Sims can be solid and consistent with the ball, I mean that would be just a godsend as a backup. I mean, with Leavitt, if he's taking more chances, that's something that's okay. You're not necessarily engaged in a quarterback battle to where you have a few guys going out there maybe earning equal reps to where one mistake on a day could alter your position in the pecking order. So the main thing with Leavitt, obviously, is to continue to progress, to avoid that sophomore slump, to understand that he's a known commodity, a highly known commodity. I'm sure a lot of teams are going to spend a lot of time this offseason reviewing film of him. So just need to continue that development. But you certainly trust Kenny Dillingham and Marcus Arroyo to keep him right on that. And he's a gamer. He's someone that improved dramatically over the course of last season, like dramatically from game 1 to the postseason, and becoming one of the elite young quarterbacks in college football. So you're going to put your trust in that, not be too worried about, some turnovers here or there when you're taking some risks. He's a smart player.
All right, so moving on to the running back position, and I still think that Kyson Brown and Raleek Brown are still having the best camps from that group. Kyson especially just continues to look like he could be a feature back. He had one play in particular that really kind of showed off some. It was Scadaboo-esque, I think, in a way. Took a nice swing pass to the left side during Saturday scrimmage. Nice quick burst to turn upfield. Montana Warren came in, the ASU, who's got a starting nickel at this point, tried to make a tackle, and Kyson just flat out ran over him. Then showed off some nice speed to get a big gain there. Raleek, it looks like he continues to stay healthy, and his ability has never really been in question. He looks like a guy who can contribute. And overall, the run game has kind of struggled so far through the first couple of weeks, and I think a lot of that ASU's defensive front has been playing really, really well. ASU continues to kind of shuffle things around on the offensive line, but this past week I think there was some more big plays being shown. Kyson Brown had a few. Raleek had a couple. Demarius Robinson, the true freshman, is somebody who really kind of caught my eye. I think he had a great week. Had a couple of big runs during a team 11 on 11s. Had a touchdown in the scrimmage, and he had a pass protection rep in a linebackers versus running backs drill in which he absolutely dominated his man and really got the rest of the running back room fired up and put some folks on notice there. I was talking to Demario Richard, who was at Saturday's practice, and Hode and I were visiting with him for a good half hour, so getting his thoughts and what he saw. He spoke to the team and met with the running backs before Saturday's practice. He came in, said that he was really impressed with Kyson and Raleek. Thinks Kyson is in store for a really big year. Thinks Kanye is still kind of coming along a little bit, to have some faith that he'll make more of a contribution as he gets more comfortable in the offense. But for a guy who's not, I believe, still number 4 on ASU's rushing list, he thinks that big things are in store for the two Kyson and Raleek Brown at the top of that depth chart at the moment.
Yeah, I think there are probably a lot of folks that thought that Kanye Udo was going to just kind of maybe walk in and get the job, based on his credentials of rushing for over 1,000 yards at Army. And that's not to say he can or won't be the starting running back, but there's just going to be a battle. I think some folks might be selling Kyson Brown maybe a little bit short. Keep it in mind, this is third year in the program. We're entering into the third year under Kenny Dillingham, third year under Sean Aguano, obviously second year working with Marcus Arroyo. So there's a lot of team experience there. Like, he's quickly becoming one of the veteran players on this entire roster. And he showed so many flashes of high level potential last year. So it's just not going to be taken away quickly. And if Raleek Brown can be up there and we've talked many times about the 5-star, credentials that he brought to ASU from USC, and he contributed at USC. If you can get anything close to what he was expected to be coming out of high school, that's a major plus as well. So, we're wondering if it's going to be that elusive by committee approach, and it just seems like a lot of guys are competing at such high levels right now in the spring that you might have to do something like that. But a lot of football left to be played before it goes live.
Would also be remiss if I didn't say that Jason Brown's also had a really strong week as well as as a redshirt freshman running back. So again, we knew that heading in there's going to be a lot of depth, and there's shown to be a lot of depth. So we'll see exactly how it all shakes out over the coming weeks and of course into the offseason. Moving on to wide receiver, Jordan Tyson is still being held out. Obviously, there's really no reason for him to be rushed back as he comes back from that tweaked ankle a little bit. But he's been out there at practice, been very vocal, very very supportive, contributing in any kind of the non on field roles that he can. That has led to some opportunities for obviously some other guys. Running with the first team offense consistently have been Malik McClain and Noble Johnson, kind of filling in those two outside roles. Then Jalen Moss and Derek Eusebio have been seeing a lot of rotational time in the slot. I think each of those three transfer receivers, Jaron Hamilton, Noble Johnson, and Jalen Moss, excuse me. So those three have been really having each strong days. Noble Johnson was strong earlier in the week. Jaron Hamilton had a really good Thursday. This past Saturday, Jalen Moss had a couple of nice connections with both Sam Leavitt and Jeff Sims. So it was good seeing all those guys getting more comfortable, and that's something that as they continue to progress and get more reps within this offensive scheme, they'll be looking better and better. One other young receiver that I think has been continuing to make his presence felt, true freshman wide receiver Harry Hassman has continued to see some second team reps. Now, obviously, with a pretty loaded wide receiver room ahead, at least in terms of the experience factor, Hassman continues to make plays and continues to see some reps ahead of those other four true freshman receivers. And so it'll be interesting to see if he's able to keep up that momentum.
Yeah, I mean, as incredible as it is for Jordan Tyson to be returning, and the all America accolades that are sure to come his way this preseason and potentially, during the season and after it as well, you're obviously replacing multiple players, like, the bulk of the remaining depth, not just Melquan Stovall, Xavier Guillory, Troy O'Meary, Jake Smith. You've got to fortify that depth, and they have the pieces in place to do that. They obviously have not just warm bodies, but talented players. So it's really encouraging to see, especially those young transfers, Hamilton and Johnson, really stepping up and looking like they can become players, because they had difficult time getting on the field at Clemson and Alabama. So if they can contribute for ASU, be more weapons for Sam Leavitt, that's huge thing to take some of that pressure off Jordan Tyson.
Moving on to tight end Shimon Mateer, still having kind of a quiet spring, but there's been a lot of mixing and matching. The staff knows what they have in Mateer, so a lot of the other tight ends haven't seen a lot of reps, and I think one guy who's absolutely maximizing that, especially coming off of this past week, Kamari Anderson, the very athletic Kentucky transfer. He had a couple of very long catch and run touchdowns with Sam Leavitt, showing off a variety of routes in the process as well. He's just obviously kind of an athletic freak, a former 4-star prospect as well. AJ Ia, the true freshman, has also made his presence felt. Kenny Dillingham talked about how they feel, or Marcus Arroyo also, has mentioned that they feel that they have 3 tight ends that really can be in there and contribute. Didn't name them specifically, and when he talked to us on Thursday, but it's not hard to read between the lines. Obviously, you have an all Big 12 performer in Mateer, and then a couple of guys in Anderson and Ia that have been really having strong camps. Not to say that guys like a Cam Harpole haven't contributed as well, and this is obviously with this depth, it will allow ASU to play more multi-tight end sets, but I've really been impressed what I've seen from Anderson, especially. I think right now he might be one of the, for my pick, if I had to choose one guy on offense to be kind of through 2 weeks a breakout performer, he's the guy.
Yeah, to have multiple tight ends in the conversation of they're really standing out among the team, not just the position group, huge plus, because that's ASU's offense is it's going to be interesting, because obviously you got to replace Cam Scadby, you got to replace multiple wide receivers. Even though you bring back your top receiver, your top tight end back, and some highly qualified running backs, they're just major pieces that you have to replace. So the tight end position could be something of massive importance to ASU. It was last year, especially in the form of Shimon Mateer. This could be important that goes across multiple players. You just really get the feel that AJ is something special, and that something special could come to the forefront sooner than later. And could be a very, very exciting player to watch here for the Devils moving forward, starting as soon as this fall.
All right, let's close out the offense with a look at the offensive line. Not their best week. I mean, it wasn't necessarily a terrible week, but this was a week where there were some snapping issues by multiple centers, a lot of false start penalties. After Tuesday's practice, Kenny Dillingham really kind of lit in the offense a little bit in terms of their inability to perform. Had a really bad Tuesday. Things rebounded a little bit better as the week went on. So we'll see what this offensive line is able to do. Now, we're still seeing a first team rep or lineup with Josh Atkins at left tackle, Sean Naa at left guard, Ben Coleman at center, returning starter Kyle Scott at right guard, and Jalen Clem's been getting the first team reps over there at right tackle with Maxi Hanachor, the returning starter there, out for the spring. And so there have been some changes along with the first team offense as the staff wants to get some other looks. Xander Rujaroli has seen time in sets at left tackle with Jameta Ubibo at left guard and Sean Naa getting some time at center. Now, of course, Naa also was the reserve center to a season ago to Lee Fatanu. So perhaps, grooming Naa to be the center of the future as well. Champ Westbrooks has also been showing that versatility and being able to play both sides at the tackle spot. So, but of course, we've talked about in the last couple episodes that that the defensive front for ASU is pretty talented, pretty experienced. They've been given the line a little bit of a hard time early in camp. But I think, as the week progressed last week, this offensive line, the offense as a whole, as a result, I think had a little bit more consistency.
Yeah, the snapping issues, that's something that you figure can improve with time, and there is a fair amount of time to, get things under control before the season starts. If we were having these issues in, Camp Tanazona, then that's a bigger issue. And, mixing and matching, we've talked about a lot in the past about how I'm not, I'm not a huge fan of a lot of offensive line mixing and matching for the sake of mixing and matching in fall camp. In spring ball, especially when you have some very, experienced returners, and you got, a guy like Hanator who's out for the spring, perfectly reasonable to mix things up just to see what you've got, or just to have some different pieces, maybe running with the ones, that sort of deal. So, again, you optimistic about the offensive line. There's a lot that returns. You do lose one highly key piece in it in Fatanu and some other important pieces like Emmett Boley, Cade Briggs. But ASU, should have what it takes for it still to be a solid group. Eager to see what Sean brings to the table after a year off, because he was such a interesting story his true freshman season, and just one of those guys that sat out and wasn't necessarily a factor on the field for ASU's run last year. So curious to see what he's got coming back after that redshirt season.
Switching over to the D line, and they mentioned that they're still kind of winning the majority of the battles up front. Although I think the gap is closing, it's kind of following the typical flow of a football camp as things start to even out as the camp progresses into its middle and later weeks. I think so far, we talked last week. We talked about the success that the interior of the D line had. I think this past week it was kind of the edges had some really good moments and were consistent. Two guys in particular, I think, had great weeks. Justin Watley, and of course, he was such a versatile, important piece for ASU a season ago. But another young defense lineman, even though he's kind of a redshirt junior, hasn't seen a whole lot of time. But Roman Petrie has been really impressive, making plays behind the line of scrimmage. Had a number of actually pass deflections at the line of scrimmage, getting his Cam Hayward on in that respect. I think the depth, as we talked about, is just continuing to really stand out. CJ Fight, Zach Swanson are still very strong in the middle. Blazing Lona Wong, I thought, has been also key contributor from that defensive tackle spot as well.
Yeah, and anything from the edges as far as additional depth, we've talked about the rotation of three between Smith, Dorba, and Elijah O'Neal. Anything beyond that, I throw Justin Wadley in there as well. You got a guy like Petrie or anyone else, that's stepping to the occasion. That's huge. Any more depth you can get, any more rotation you can get, and be confident with them out there, very, very big deal. ASU, I think, has a pretty good pecking order on the interior positions. Guys just kind of have their spots and fill them well. Whether it's a Zach Swanson or someone like you said, Blazing Lona Wong, who had some highlights last year, catching the ball and playing defense. So again, you're not really doing a lot. You don't need to do a lot in terms of identifying starters or depth chart battles as much as you would, because of how many players return. Like, what you have there. So now it's just really locking in just improvement across the board and adding new things to it. That's a benefit, a major luxury that you have excuse me, with the roster retention that ASU's had pretty much across the board, but especially on defense and on the defensive line. That's how you can just really, really again work with what you have and improve the pieces that you already have, and not use the time in kind of a exploratory role of just trying to figure out what these players can do and where they fit. You have the benefit of knowing that already, and now you can really get intricate in what you do with them, and focus on some really fine tuning things, and hopefully a big part of that is increasing the pass rush, as we've talked about numerous times.
Moving on to linebacker, I think we can not a whole lot needs to be said here. They're just so steady, and you're really seeing the comfort level of Jordan Crook, Keyshawn Elliott, Cyrus Fiaseu, even Martell Hughes, the youngster, just having that second year. They know what they're doing. They're reacting a lot better, more naturally. Jordan Crook in particular, I think, is having a really strong camp. I've mentioned earlier had the interception of Sam Leavitt during the Saturday scrimmage, but overall I think he's a guy that could be a dark horse, like defensive MVP. Because obviously the reigning champ and Shamari Simmons is gone. He looks like a guy that is just feeling so much more comfortable. He's all over the field, coming up, making good plays against the run, dropping back and making some good plays in coverage. Of course, Keyshawn Elliott's a invaluable piece. So ASU is really in great shape with those two guys as starters, and some good young depth behind him. Cyrus Fiaseu in his second year, and of course Martell Hughes as he's in his second year, also playing the position in his moving from safety in high school, but also he's a young bright player as well. So ASU's in good shape.
Yeah, similar topic as the defensive line, where you have the luxury of many returning players, and I truly believe there to be something substantially significant about the difference between year one and year two. Year one, you're kind of playing with the hair on fire, trying to learn everything, and the coaches are trying to learn you. Right now that you've got that under your belt, and these guys have been contributors, it's not necessarily like they were injured or walk-ons to where even though you kind of know about them, you don't know everything about them. The coaches know what they have with these players, so you could just start to fit the pieces into the right areas, and really focusing on development and improvement, because we've talked about those linebackers, very solid players, very, very good players, but each of them had some downtime or missed some time or had some ups and downs, that sort of thing. So there's always something to work on, and though they've been steady, that's obviously a very, very good sign. You want that to spill over through the remainder of the spring and into the fall, into the season. So that sort of competition, that steadiness is going to be music to the ears of Sun Devil fans if that continues.
All right, so finishing out with the secondary at corner, obviously you have your two starters in Javen Robinson and Keith Abney. Each practice, it seems, at least my own personal rankings and flip flopping, Kamari Anderson was my pick for the breakout on the offense. And again, these are two like returning starters, but Jordan Crook and Keith Abney, I think, are just really two guys that I think have just from the eye test look like they've really leveled up on the precipice of just like breaking through in terms of like the stardom factor. Keith Abney is just looking really, really good at corner. And that's no slight to anybody else in that room, but I just think he looks like a guy that could be in the next all conference caliber corner there. But what really I think is the storyline through here at the cornerback positions through the first couple weeks, the young depth. Rodney Bimage, we've talked about him a lot last week in terms of what he was able to do with, especially with Robinson, kind of not doing team sessions early on. He's made the most of his chances. He's looking really good. But the redshirt freshman and local guy from Chaparral, Kenny Dillingham's alma mater, Plas Johnson, is really looking good. He had a strong week too. Had a couple of interceptions during some team sessions, and also are also in one-on-ones, and really just looking overall like a guy who's found his stride in the defense. Good hands, made a really incredible catch during some drills in which Kenny Dillingham was passing over, and he was then started to shout out to reminding everybody around that he was a wide receiver, but just a really interesting guy to see really kind of make the most of those reps. So I think even though you have two established starters there, I think you have a lot of very intriguing talent behind them that can push them.
Yeah, and that sort of development is exactly what you want to see. You want to see the upperclassmen not resting on their laurels. A guy like Keith Abney is someone that could just be that prototype player who just improves every year. He went from kind of a role player, light contributor as a true freshman, to a starter who improved dramatically from game 1 through game 14, I guess. And if he's getting better, even more so this spring, then the next step is like an all conference caliber player, so you really like to see that step-by-step progression and seeing a player make the most of what he can do at the college level. And if the youngsters are doing that and they're getting confidence and they're ready to go and ready to be, called in action when the time is necessary. And we obviously know that they're going to play the best players out there, whether that's a senior or a true freshman. So this sort of competition at that position group, something you really like to see.
All right, so moving over to safety now, you know what you have with Alford and Rouser. So again, kind of what we talked about earlier on the offensive side. Some of the more veteran guys are not necessarily having to be playing a ton of reps. So this has been really I think a chance for the younger guys in that group or some of the newer guys in that group to really show their stuff to the coaching staff. Along with Rodney Bimage and Plas Johnson at corner last year, you had Chris Johnson and Tony Lewis and Kuba come in that quartet of young corners. Well, this year, Tony Lewis and Kuba and Chris Johnson have converted into safety, and I think have looked really, really good. I mean, they're both really athletic players, some smart players, and they're not necessarily playing in some starter reps, but in terms of making a push and playing and mixing in with the second team defense there, I think they're really looking good and making some moves, positioning themselves well for the future, especially with a guy like Alford, who's we got just a year left. At the nickel spot, one of the kind of the open battles, one of the few open battles that we talked about in our spring preview. Montana Warren still running with the ones and the first team at nickel, but I think Kindrich Breedlove is another guy who's battling that has probably the skill set that could fit in and play what that nickel position needs in this defensive scheme. So it'll be an interesting battle to see in the coming weeks now as Breedlove has gets more reps and more comfortable within this Brian Ward defensive scheme.
Yeah, you talk about Tony Lewis Cuba. Folks got to realize that he was the highest rated defensive signee that ASU had last year for its high school class as a 4-star player. So someone that came to ASU with some expectations. I don't believe he got any action. I know he redshirted, but I don't think he even played in a couple games last year, if I'm not mistaken. So, you've got some high caliber guys that are coming up through the ranks to complement those upperclassmen at safety. So you've got some balance, like we talked about at cornerback, and that's just a very, very good thing because even though it's great to have the experienced players and you want to have that. You always have to be preparing for the future. So you need to balance those upperclassmen who can get in and get things done on the field right now, but also giving the younger players a chance to prove what they've got and earn whatever position they can grasp.
All right. So as for special teams, obviously all eyes would be on the kicking position, but unfortunately during practices, they mostly stay in the bubble while most of the practice, of course, happens on the Kajikawa practice field. So media, we don't get to see a whole lot. What we did see is Jesus Gomez doing a lot better and more consistent than in week one, where he had really just kind of amounted to one rough session, but he did have a 58-yarder in a team session. But every kick we saw this week, the very few of them, he looked good, strong leg, and this. So I think ASU will continue to have if he's able to continue that consistency that he's had throughout his all-conference caliber career. This is a guy that I think ASU should feel comfortable kicking from 50 plus.
Yeah, that's a player that I'm not going to go so far as to say I'm giving him like a total free pass for the entire offseason, but I'm like kind of in that position, especially the position that he plays. This is someone that's just very proven, very accomplished in his own regard, but exponentially so when you take that under the lens of comparison to what ASU has had at place kicker for the last few years. Major upgrade, in my opinion, a proven upgrade. So that's someone it's great to see, of course, that he's increasing the consistency of what he's doing. Even if that were to have continued a little bit, again, it's going to take until the season starts for me to form my judgment on him.
All right, Joe, that's the rundown of what happened during this second week of spring. And I think that's about it. So this is kind of one of the rare episodes. We don't have any interview guests. So, nobody to thank other than ourselves for sticking around and foregoing the national championship game between Florida and Houston to bring you this rundown of the latest of Sun Devil.
Which at this point adds 46 seconds and is a 1-point game. That's part of the beauties of doing this show remotely is I've got a television right in front of my face here, multitasking. So yeah,
go Gators! I guess for my bracket, no matter what, I'm locked into like second in the station pool. So but yeah, math didn't work out for me. Damn those St. John's played. Anyway, make sure you stay with us on the social media side of things. You can follow the show on Twitter at SOTD Podcast. On Instagram, we are at Speak of the Devils. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook and give me a follow on all things social at BDenny29.
You can follow me at Joe Healey 42. Once again, huge reminder to you. Come on out to Pedal House Brewery on Mill Avenue, 6 p.m. this Tuesday, April the 8th. Catch up not only with myself, but Ben Coleman and Sun Devil Hall of Famer Juan Roque. And a huge thank you to our sponsors, Cactus Sports, Jones Auto Group, Burrito Express. We told you last week, get on out to Burrito Express, their locations. Get a burrito, and you might be in the running for some awesome Cam Scattaboo merch by the end of the month. So get out there and do that. Also, of course, huge thank you to devilsdigest.com. Spaghetti Shack. I'm rocking a Spaghetti Shack shirt on my chest right now. That's how much I love the place. And, of course, Sun Devil Family Charities.
As well as Home Field Apparel. And you can use offer code SUN24, SUN24 at checkout at homefieldapparel.com for 15% off your first purchase. They have an amazing ASU collection, and you should grab several pieces of that for a great discount as well. Make sure you also subscribe or give us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice, wherever you subscribe to get our content. Joe and I will be back next week as we recap week 3 of spring. We'll be more than halfway home.